Are the Steelers taking teams too lightly? That's the question that everyone keeps wanting answers for. We'll answer that question with clips from the Steelers locker room and from the podium as well. Coaches and players alike will answer that question, and we'll get into predictions for this week. Also, will the Steelers get their key linebacker, Landon Roberts, back? All here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here joined today by Jenna Harner. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find this show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks, of course, is daily fantasy made easy. Download PrizePicks today as an app or go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code all lowercase LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. More on them later. As I said before, we're joined by Jenna Harner of Channel 11 WPXI. She's back on the show. Not on a Friday, but on a Wednesday because we got the short week with the Steelers playing on Thursday Night Football. Jenna, I want to dive right into a big talking point that's spreading around the town. And this kind of stuff happens whenever a team loses to a team with a really bad record like the Arizona Cardinals, like the Steelers did 24-10 on Sunday. And not to keep revisiting the loss itself, because we've done that a lot on this show and everywhere else. But I think it's important to note the talk right now about the Steelers taking the game lightly. Jaylen Warren said a comment similar to that. Dan Moore said a comment similar to that. And now there's a certain clip out there of Diontae Johnson alluding to that a little bit there. But there's also been a mixed grouping of that. Alex Highsmith specifically said they did not do that. Pat Fryermuth said they didn't do that. Najee Harris said they didn't do that. And now a lot of other people have come out from the team. Cam Heyward was very adamant about that. We'll have him on here in a bit. What is your readout from how this team is kind of trying to put the right message out there about what happened in this last game, but staying focused on the fact that they have a game in just a couple days here?
Yeah, I think it's just been a really interesting handful of days just with all of this conversation. And look, like there's no denying you as an athlete know going in, you're the better team just based on your record and just based on your confidence in yourself, especially with the way the Steelers came off of that win against Cincinnati, their offense putting up 400 yards for the first time since 2020. There was a lot of optimism. And it's like, hey, now we get to play an opponent who doesn't have a great record, who isn't winning a ton of games. You feel like you are the superior opponent, but at the same time, you're not going in and being like, okay, this is going to be a cupcake. We hear from so many of the players in the locker room, hey, this is every team in the NFL can win any single game on any given day. That's just the reality of it. And I think I keep going back to what Mason Cole said in the locker room after, where he talked about just how weird of a day it was, how weird of a game it was, how weird of a feel it was. And that's really, I feel like when we talked with Diontae Johnson in the locker room on Tuesday, what he alluded to and the way that Diontae Johnson was talking. I know there's this shorter clip circulating of just Diontae saying, yeah, we kind of took them lightly, but there's so much more context to what he was saying, where he talked about the work in the week leading up to it was really good. The preparation they felt was really good. The whole week of everything that they did was great leading up to Sunday's game against the Cardinals. And then when they got in stadium, when they got to game day, things just felt a little weird. They felt a little off, and that might have been where they took them a little bit lightly. And especially too, I mean, the way that we saw the Steelers start to move the ball offensively on that first drive, it's hard not to feel a little bit of optimism where they're like, hey, look, we're continuing kind of what we did a week ago. And I'm not sitting here trying to make excuses for these players. I don't know what's in their heads. Of course not. But I can see where that came from. And then when things didn't start to go their way, then there might have been a little bit of like, I don't know what's going on here. But go ahead.
No, I was going to say, let's play the clip because I have the whole clip from Diontae Johnson, as well as Eddie Faulkner, the offensive coordinator, who also gave his comments on that question. Here was Diontae Johnson and Eddie Faulkner from Tuesday in the Steelers locker room.
Diontae, what are some of the challenges that the Patriots poses for you guys? They've held a lot of opponents to 10 points or fewer last 4 games.
They're very sound. They rely on their back end a lot. They got a great D line. We gotta have respect for those guys. Just because their record, it don't mean that they're gonna come in here and lay down for us. So like we just gotta come here. We watched film from last week and respond different this week. There's nothing different. Like I said, the record don't mean nothing. Same amount of respect for out there in the NFL too. So it don't matter who's on the opposite side. So you can't take nobody lightly.
Was Sunday a wake-up call?
The idea that you can't take anybody lightly, is that something that you guys learn even more after the way that the game on Sunday played out?
I feel like, I don't know, I felt like that the whole week. Like, once we got out there, I just felt like something was different. Like, we wasn't at our best or whatnot, but I feel like we just took them lightly than we should have. Like I said, we can't come in this Thursday with the same mindset. We're going to be fine. Like, we moved past it. We looking forward to this week. We're getting ready to work today.
Heard a lot from your players this week about how they felt throughout the week. Everyone took everything seriously and practice was aimed at that, and then there were just breakdowns on the field. How do you as a coach isolate those issues when preparation was what it was supposed to be, but execution wasn't?
Yeah, I think you got to draw parallels between them. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of the issues that came up in that game, we talked about and discussed, whether it was myself or Coach Tomlin, in front of the room. And so now that gives you all the ability in the world to walk in there and be like, guys, look, we talked about this, and this didn't happen. And so what happens with that? The accountability now falls on the players to make sure that they're executing and getting done what they need to get done. So we'll just continue on that path, but making sure that they understand they got to have some more urgency with how they go about their business.
And do you think players are loose with a 2-10 team coming in here?
I don't think we were loose. Like the question was asked, like we prepared the right way, we did everything right that way. We just didn't execute in the moment, and that's the message.
And you mentioned accountability. Do you feel like the players are owning it?
Yeah, they're in there in that building, they're owning it. And like I say, we have these conversations outwardly in front of everybody, so there's nowhere to hide.
So I think there's a few things here. One, when Diontae says hey, I think maybe we took them lightly, he's talking about the day of the game, like maybe something happened there in that moment, but not in preparation. It wasn't like the Steelers didn't come in prepared. They knew what they wanted to do. They knew what the Cardinals wanted to do. They just missed in the moment. And like, a bad day at the office is the phrase that's been that I think a lot of people have said. Here's also Cam Heyward, when I asked him a very similar question about that game. And this is Cam Heyward, the captain. Diontae just told us he felt like preparation throughout the week was at the level that was expected, but then something changed on game day as far as maybe taking the Cardinals lightly. Did you see something like that happen, and how do you prevent something like that?
I didn't really look at it like that. Self-inflicted wounds. I don't think it comes down to detail throughout the week. I think it comes down to execution in those games, staying focused, and the penalties were out of control. Offense, defense, special teams. Defense especially, we let them sustain drives. Offense, it got us out of a rhythm. Special teams, you couldn't even get a rhythm because you were starting on such longer fields or shorter fields. So, I look at that as a big contributor to that, but we got to clean that up. And I understand that we're all ticked off about the game and how it went, but, it's the NFL. Every team's got a good chance to win.
This is where I continue to see things, Jenna, is that the Steelers prepared like they were supposed to. They and you can look at the tape. It wasn't like the defense was being caught off guard and looking the wrong way and be like, "Oh my gosh, we've never seen that play before." No. Listen, I've covered that at Pitt where they've admitted that on the field, like they've said, like we never saw something like that from that team. The Steelers didn't happen. That's when you go back and you say, this team was unprepared and things like that. Sometimes you have bad performances, and it's just on the fact that it was a bad performance, and that's where the team has to isolate everything. And I think Eddie Faulkner, in that moment, talking about how the Steelers we hold these guys accountable, and we tell the players this in the players meetings. I think that is very illuminating because Mike Tomlin, he's a guy, he gives nothing of that to us, and that's by design. That's not an accident. He does not let us get inside the organization because he says, hey, I'm like, when Diontae Johnson says something wild or does something wild, he's like, that's between me and him. You can ask him about that if you want. And I think Eddie Faulkner, as an OC, he in that moment, he's like, hey, this is how we account for that. But bottom line is we have to execute. And I think that's the message across the board. The players have to do their jobs in the right moments.
Yeah, and especially now coming in on a short week, you have to not only be able to turn the page from everything you did wrong, all the opportunities and times you shot yourself in the foot against the Cardinals, and say, hey, look, we have to be able to do this, and we have to be able to go out there and execute against a team with a really good defense in the New England Patriots, with a really solid defense. And that's kind of one of the things that we've talked with a lot of the guys about kind of throughout the week. But again, this I know there's so much narrative about, oh, this is bad coaching and bad leadership. I don't entirely think it's that, because again, you're hearing a lot of the players in the locker room say, look, this wasn't a, go into the week after we beat the Bengals and, la-di-da-di-da, oh, the two Cardinals are coming to town. It's like, no, we have to keep refocusing. There's playoff spots at hand. There's staying alive and staying where you are in the playoff race compared to your division and compared to the rest of the AFC. And it's taking care of business. And at the end of the day, they didn't take care of business.
Yeah, that's the bottom line. And there's sometimes I think people want wider answers and pointing fingers in different directions, but sometimes you need to point at the players on the field who were in position to make plays and didn't make plays, and that's where the buck stops in those situations. But I want to talk about a few other aspects of this when it pertains to leadership. We'll get to that and our picks this week, including the Steelers and Patriots game on Thursday Night Football, all here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Jenna Harner. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you, this show is also sponsored by Skylight Frames. If you're looking for a meaningful gift this holiday that your loved one will actually use and enjoy, you can shop for that person that sometimes it can be tough to buy the right gift for by getting the Skylight Digital Picture Frame, the most personal and thoughtful gift that's easy to personalize for this holiday season. You can take the stress out of your holiday shopping and take advantage of this easy-to-gift opportunity that everyone will think you spent hours personalizing, because the Skylight Digital Picture Frame does exactly that. Skylight is a touchscreen photo frame that you can send photos to straight from your phone, and they appear in seconds. You can even preload photos from before the box is open, so when it's unwrapped and plugged in, your most treasured memories will appear. It's the perfect gift for everyone, and satisfaction guaranteed. They're so confident that you'll love Skylight, they'll offer free 120-day returns. It's a top-rated brand with over 1 million happy customers, thousands of 5-star reviews, and available in over 30 countries. Recommended by the Today Show, Forbes, New York Magazine, and more. And as a special limited-time offer for our listeners, you get $15 off your purchase of a Skylight frame when you go to skylightframe.com/lockedon. To get $15 off your purchase of a Skylight frame, just go to skylightframe.com/lockedon. That's SKYLIGHTFRAME.com/lockedon. Back here in the Locked On Steelers podcast, Chris Carter, Jenna Harner. We're keeping the show rolling here. Jenna, before we get into our picks, I wanted to address this with you on the leadership aspect. I noticed this when I was putting together all the quotes and the people who've talked about whether it was lightly or not lightly, or we need to focus, we need to rally the troops, those type of things. I noticed when we look back at it, the guys that said the word lightly even brought it up as a thing. It was Jaylen Warren, Dan Moore Jr., and Diontae Johnson. And you talk to other guys like Cam Heyward, Alex Heisler. There was not a defensive player on the team that said that. And there were some offensive players on the team that also didn't say that and also countered that and said that wasn't the case. And I think it brings up an interesting aspect here to make me wonder, is part of the problem here for messaging and things like that there's still no bona fide leader on the offense. The defense has tons of leaders. Minka Fitzpatrick, Cam Heyward, TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith is a role player on that side of the ball when he would be a leader if he was a player of that caliber for the offense.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder if the lack of a pure, obvious alpha or leader type person on the offensive side of the ball is a part of the issue right now when things like that happen.
Yeah, you do wonder about that a little bit. And this has been kind of a topic of conversation because of just how young this offense is. I mean, your quarterback, second-year guy who is a born leader, and what we've seen not only from him at Pitt, but, since he's been in this starting role, he's earned the trust of those guys offensively. He is, the guy that they look to in terms of a leader, but then really kind of across the board. I mean, Diontae, I feel like, is one of the senior most guys in that room, if not, the key guy when it comes to the skill players. Pat Freiermuth is in his third year. Najee's in his third year. So those guys kind of are on that cusp of, vets and just in terms of how young this group is. But again, George Pickens in his second year, like this is a very, very, very young group. And you're going to have that. You're going to have kind of looking to, okay, who is our quote unquote spokesperson? Who's that guy that is going to be the voice of this offense? And you're right. I don't entirely think that there is one. I also, not trying to be in a harsh way, but I feel like there's a lot of big personalities on offense, which is usually the case among receivers, running backs. I mean, all these guys, stats and touchdowns and yards, that all means something incredibly important to them personally, not just for them as an offense, but them as players themselves. There's a little bit of, hey, I'm making sure my team wins, but I need to eat too type thing. I mean, there's been so many times we've talked about this season where this team will lose and you will have a receiver who's frustrated with their day or a running back who's frustrated with their day. Unfortunately, that's just part of the way the National Football League is. I think that's kind of sometimes across different teams, you'll find that. Not always the case, but I think that plays a little bit of a role into this here too, where these guys, they're still young. And we also have to look at the fact that a lot of these guys, they're in their young 20s, 24, like they're still learning as they go. And this is something, again, I don't entirely think this goes to coaching because it can. There can be parts of their demeanor and how they handle themselves that can be taught through coaching, but that's also too taught through some of the guys defensively when you have those captains in that way. But this offense is still just really young. And again, not making excuses, but I think that plays a really big role in just in terms of there's not that one main voice on offense. And again, all they've dealt with this year too, I think that plays a factor. Just again, their offensive coordinator gets fired, something that they all took very personally. And when you don't have that number one guy, again, it is Kenny Pickett, but Kenny Pickett's also just in year 2 and is still kind of gaining all of just, how to be that guy, how to be the quarterback. And not that he's done a bad job by any means in terms of his leadership, but I think also with him getting injured all of a sudden, there's not that main, okay, this is our leader, this is our guy, if that makes sense.
Right. No, I'm right with you. That makes a whole lot of sense because Kenny Pickett is the quarterback. You want him to be the leader, but I really do think that there's there's something there when you look at that and you say like, hey, if you're not dominating on the field, it's tough to be a leader at that point. And that's the thing is, the only people who could say they're even performing proficiently on the field are either on the offensive line at times or Najee Harris or Jalen Warren and maybe Pat Freiermuth, but it hasn't been consistent for anyone, so it's tough to have a leader there. One person who isn't a vocal leader but has become very much a helping leader and role player is Landon Roberts. He was a limited participant in practice, which could be a very big starting point for the Steelers because they need him to be able to run the defense the way that they want. When he was out, we saw so many things change. I think that can also be a big boost to the team.
Yeah, communication problems. That was something that we heard, time in, time out from Mike Tomlin, from Terrell Austin, defensive coordinator, when we talked with him on Tuesday. That was a big thing. And of course, when you lose the quarterback of your defense, that's going to happen. Communication issues are going to be a little bit of a thing. And Roberts, has done a phenomenal job stepping into the role just based on the fact that, that isn't, that's not what his main duties are, but he's done a phenomenal job since they've had to have him there with the loss of Cole Holcomb and Quan Alexander. So you Steelers fans and the defense kind of hoping that they have him there, but at the same time too, and I'm sure you've mentioned this throughout the week, Mike Tomlin expressing his confidence in both Blake Martinez and Miles Jack. If those two veterans who have been around, have done it a little bit, if they are in a situation where Roberts can't go or Roberts isn't a full 100%, isn't going to take as many snaps as he normally does because of his injury, you're going to look to those guys who have been there, have done that before, especially Miles Jack being in this system. But that's going to be a massive thing. If they can get a Landon Roberts back based on the way that we saw him go down, come back in for that one snap and go down again, that would be a massive boost, especially against a Patriots offense that has really struggled to put up points.
Absolutely. It is a big thing there. We got to get to our picks here in a minute on the Locked On Steelers podcast. We'll go over our standings in the Pick'em group as well as our picks for this week. We'll try to get through as many of them as we can before we give you our Steelers Patriots prediction, all here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Stick with us. We got a lot to discuss. But first, I want to remind you this show is also brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America, and it's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you can pick more or less on the player projections from anywhere between 2 to 6 players, and then start watching the winnings roll in. PrizePicks is a fun new daily fantasy game that everyone needs to start playing right now. With basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball with what's called the Specials League. It's a league created specifically for combo projections that includes 2 more players from different sports or leagues. For example, if LeBron James and Travis Kelce are 2 people you want to look into, they have a 10.5 combo of 3-pointers made combined with receptions. So you could say more or less, and if they combine for over 10 and a half or under 10 and a half, you can watch your winnings roll in on PrizePicks. And PrizePicks offers a reboot policy where entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For NFL and college football top 25 matchups, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and doesn't return in the second, that player is rebooted, and that makes PrizePicks the only daily fantasy sports platform with injury insurance. PrizePicks offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. So to get in on all the action on PrizePicks with NFL, NBA, NHL, college sports, and more, go to PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. That's PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. We're also brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the #1 sportsbook in America. Get ready for the rest of this NFL season. As the Steelers make their playoff push, you can try to make your push and win some money on FanDuel Sportsbook. And new customers right now get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. So if you think the Steelers are going to beat the Patriots on Thursday night, put down a $5 bet and you can get $150 back in bonus bets if the Steelers win. You can also look at all the odds, lines, and ends, which we'll start giving you in the third segment here. The Steelers go into this game, at least as we record on Tuesday evening, 6 points favorites, -280 is the money line, with the over-under set at 30.5 points. That's a lot of different ways that you can start making money when you start betting on FanDuel Sportsbook, the #1 sportsbook in America. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and get your NFL season jumped with more FanDuel Sportsbook betting. And that's FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, Chris Carter, Jenna Harner, here talking all things Steelers and NFL here on the show. Quick shout out to our Pigskin Pick'em League. We have new people in first place. Crazy Eyes and Matt W. tied at first place with 132 wins right now. I have 117. Jenna Harner, I am looking for your score. Oh, wait, nope. I passed it up. 1 second. Let me get back to it.
127.
127. You are on fire right now. You're in 19th place. You can catch the leaders if you get hot here. I am far behind you at 10 games back, and I don't think I'm ever going to be able to catch you this year. Yeah, brush off your shoulders. I'll beat you in fantasy this week on the Fantasy Football Insider when we play that for.
I think I need one more win to win the whole season. So
listen, that makes the drama important for the comeback. You know, that's what we're trying to do over here. But anyway. Silly. But let's get into some picks here. We're not going to do all the picks because we're kind of crunched for time because of the short week here. So we'll go over some key games. Rams at Ravens. The Ravens at home are 7.5-point favorites, and this is a key game to watch because the Steelers still want to hope at the AFC North crown. They need the Ravens to start losing some games. The Rams are probably one of the games that they can still afford to win because the Jaguars are coming, the Niners are coming, and the Dolphins are coming to face the Ravens. I think the Ravens win this one, but I think that the Rams actually cover, and this is actually closer than 7.5 points.
You took the words right out of my mouth. Baltimore coming off the bye. Obviously, this is kind of a perfect time. They're at home. The Rams coming from the West Coast to the East Coast. While I like what LA has done a lot as of late, especially in their last 2 games, I think the Ravens are just the better team here.
Colts at Bengals. The Bengals surprised everyone with how good Jake Browning looked against the Jaguars. And frankly, I think it makes the Steelers win over the Bengals that much more impressive when you see Jake Browning play. But the Colts have also kept up. Both of these teams are 7-5, tied right with the Steelers. Oh, no, are the Bengals 7-5? I might be overstating their record there. I think they're 6-5. Excuse me. So they're
6-6. Hold on.
They're 6-6.
There we go.
We're getting our math right here. But the Bengals have a chance to tie the Colts and get right back in this wild card race. But I think the Colts win this game. The Colts have been a better football team than people have given them credit for, with Gardner Minshew and all the other injuries that they've sustained. I think the Colts find a way to win on the road. The Bengals, I think they might be a little spent after playing the Jaguars. Just my feel there. What say you, Jenna?
See, I'm going the flip side. I loved what I saw from Cincinnati on a Monday night. And I love how you can see this team just have so much faith in Jake Browning. I think also having a healthy T. Higgins back makes that offense so much more dynamic. We saw that obviously Jamar Chase had himself a night. I like the Bengals. I think this one is a very, very, very close, like field goal or last second type score game here.
The Jaguars at the Browns is also a big game because the Browns are still tied with the Steelers at 7-5. The Jaguars are only a game up on the Steelers and the Browns at 8-4 after their loss to the Bengals last week. I'm taking the Browns are also 3-point favorites at home, even with Trevor Lawrence. With him in question, so that's part of it. But I'm going to take the Jaguars. I think this is a must-win game for them. They need to go on the road, and the Browns, they're coming off a tough loss. I think the Jaguars find a way to win and keep afloat because the Jaguars are looking right behind them, and the Colts and Texans are breathing down their necks.
And sometimes it does tend to be the more desperate team or the team that needs that win more in terms of where they are, not necessarily the best team winning the game. I'm going with Cleveland, and one of the stats that kind of backs things up. The Browns have the best defense in the league when they're at home. They have the 30th defense in the league when they're on the road. That home field advantage is something that works so well for them. They have the crowd on their side. I think another week in the system for Joe Flacco is going to be really beneficial. I like the Browns. It's going to be ugly and close, though.
Bills at Chiefs, one of the games of the week here. Chiefs are 2.5-point favorites, but I'm rolling with the Bills. I haven't liked what I've seen out of the Chiefs lately. I think that the Buffalo Bills need this game very much so. The Chiefs, they kind of need it too, but I think less so because of the state of the AFC West. But the Bills, if they want to get in this playoff race, like since they need this win, I think the Bills find a way to get the W.
Yeah, I'm going with Buffalo too. I know this is at Arrowhead in December, Kansas City, but the Chiefs receivers continue to not be able to make plays. Isaiah Pacheco as a running back has been really solid, but when your receivers aren't catching the ball and when you have Patrick Mahomes, it almost takes him out of it, which is just unfathomable to say. Bills are a little more desperate here. I like what Buffalo's done a lot lately. They had the bye. They're coming off right at the right time, and I think that they falter in the week after, but I like the Bills here in this one.
Last game before the Steelers, Sunday Night Football, Eagles at Cowboys, a huge showdown in the NFC East. Cowboys are 3.5-point favorites, and I'm taking Dallas. I know that the Eagles have been a better team this year, but I think that the Eagles are due. There's the NFC East curse that no team has won the NFC in back-to-back seasons, and if the Cowboys win this game, they will be tied with the Eagles with 4 games to go for both of these teams. I think the Cowboys find a way to win.
I know there's some crazy stat that's like the week after you play the 49ers, every team seems to lose. I think that's usually the case. So this is something I love Dallas here. I love what their offense has been able to do. Dak has been playing phenomenally. Their offense has been so explosive. I think the Eagles get a little bit exploited here. I still think they're one of the best teams in the league, but I think Dallas pulls off the win at home here. And they've done a lot of it recently. They've won a lot against Philly at home.
Absolutely. Now it's time for Steelers Patriots. Let's talk about this game real briefly. We have a crossover Thursday event. Don't worry. We'll have Mike Diabate of the Locked On Patriots podcast to look at this game closer tomorrow. But Jenna, what is your score prediction for this game? How do you see this game playing out? What's the biggest factor that leads to that result?
Well, there's a reason the over-under is set for, 30.5, and it's the lowest over-under it's been in God knows how many years. I'm going with the Steelers. I think they win this game. I think it's like a 20-10 type game. Look, both of these teams' offense has been really hard to come by. They've really looked to rely a lot on their defense. It's a short week. I think the Steelers have a little bit of the advantage, obviously, in Mitch Trubisky just being there, knowing the system, knowing how to execute things. With him talking with us on Tuesday, you have a feeling that they're going to look to take deep shots when they can, and he's going to look to air it out when they can. I think this isn't going to be pretty by any means. I just think the Steelers feel like a little bit more of a complete team. I know there's the aspect of Bill Belichick and the way that he coaches. This is a very different Patriots team than Patriots teams of past. So I think it's going to be like 20-10. I think the Steelers defense creates a turnover, especially if they can get a lead. And it doesn't have to be a big one. If you take a 3-0 lead against the Patriots this season, it's basically like you have a touchdown lead. So if the Steelers can take a little early lead, it does not have to be much. I think they'll be able to play a little bit ahead, have TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith make some noise in the pass rush. I think the defense will be able to force a turnover, especially, again, if Landon Roberts is in the game. I think that changes a lot of things, too. I like the Steelers in this one, but it is not going to be pretty.
It's not going to be pretty at all, but we'll cover how not pretty it will be on Crossover Thursday as we talk more about that matchup with Mike Diabate of Locked On Patriots. Jenna Harner, thanks so much. You can find all her work at Channel 11 WPXI in Pittsburgh at Jenna Harner 11 for all her work on Twitter. I'm Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. Read more work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com, and find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Back tomorrow, getting you ready for Thursday Night Football with Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network.